Hello, hello. Yeah, as a sound guy, I'm supposed to do the mic check first. Is everybody awake? Okay, everybody had good lunch? Ye- The food was tasty today, so I mean, you should say like yes or no. So actually, I want to start the session with waking you all up, right? And for that, we'll do some fun gameplay. All right. So let's divide the room in three sections. So there is this left section, at least in my point of view. There's the center section, and then there is this right side. So on the count of three, uh, first of all of us will say hey, okay? And the pattern of counting would be like this. So I'll say 1, 2, 3, hey, all right? In the next round, what we'll do is I'll point out one side, and whichever side I point out, only that side should say hey, and everybody else should be quiet, right? Is my voice like coming in and out, something like that? Okay, right. And if at all I do like this, it means everybody again has to say hey. Does it sound good? All right. So that's where we'll also understand if you are awake, and at the same time we'll know how good the food was, right? Okay. So we'll start with 1, 2, 3. Louder, louder. It should feel like you just had food. It's not like the sessions right after breakfast or before lunch, right? Luckily, it got moved after lunch. So we'll do it one more time. 1, 2, 3. Okay. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Center. 1, 2, 3. Oh, it's louder here. The mix is not balanced. 1, 2, 3. All right. So let's do this a little bit. Just make sure that you follow my gesture. Don't miss out because then you lose the game otherwise, right? All right. 1, 2, 3. Sorry. Okay, sorry. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. All right, so this is interactive audio, right? Interactive audio is nothing but audio sources, all of you, like there is one audio source here, one audio source here, one audio source here, kind of interacting based on the input given by the user. In this case, it was me, right? So that's basically the whole context of game audio and interactive audio. I wanted to do this exercise just to prove a point that game audio is not just about the digital medium. There is a whole application of interactive audio in the live scene. There are theme parks that do all of this, and we just now did without any digital media, right? So we did all analog, right? So there's one more thing I wanted to point out, which is just to like understand the context here, which is a lot of people think that because they have not explored game audio in the context of Unity or Unreal, they don't know game audio. But how many of you remember Ringa Ringa Roses? Right. How many of you remember Poshampa Bhai Poshampa? Yeah, I mean, I think it's a North Indian thing, but Poshampa Bhai Poshampa, and then there's something going on. There are also like some other games that we used to play in childhood, like Akkad Bakkad Bambe Bo, Assi Nabbe Pure So, right? So these are all games that are making use of audio in some scenario. So it's not that none of you have explored game audio, right? So just reminding you that you are already aware of it. It's just that we have to bring that observation into the digital world, and it will all start to make sense. So let's go to the next slide, which is, this is like a quote from me. So I'll just read it out. So building games and interactive audio experiences like conducting an orchestra, what I did just now. The difference is that instead of doing it live, we write our instructions in code directly or indirectly, which means we get to predict and control the future by thinking ahead of it, right? We basically predict what the user is going to do, where the interaction is going to happen or supposed to happen, and then we plan, okay, what sound should play there. So it's a very fun activity to do in that context, and I hope this is making sense to you all as well. So just for me to understand who the audience is, how many of you are developers? Oh, nice. So really interesting to see that there are developers who are interested in the game audio side. How many of you are in the creative audio world? Okay, nice. Any publishers here? Should have been there. I have like a huge pitch for them. Okay, no worries. I just wanted to like understand what the audience is, just so that I can start my discussion about today's topic, which is building a game audio mindset, a guide for scalable audio implementation. So there are some keywords that I have written here on purpose. So the first thing is game audio mindset. I'm not calling this as a skill because in my opinion, it is not. It's actually a mindset. And the reason I'm also calling this a mindset is because it is not restricted to the audio departments. Game audio is something that every domain of gaming, game creation can actually explore. Similar to how all of us have opinion about images, right? We see a game, an artist like would have sent a bill to you, and without being an artist yourself, you'll be like, oh, you know what? This green is way too bright. We all have opinions about it. We all have opinions about narrative because we have grown up listening to stories around us. However, when it comes to audio, we are slightly not that cautious. And we'll be like, hey, you know what? We'll go to the audio person and we'll say, does this sound good to you? If it is yes, then we'll just go ahead with it, right? So the idea is today to build a mindset. We'll do that together. The other thing I want to focus on is the scalable audio implementation. Because in my opinion, if you just know a specific domain, but you're not implementing it and applying it, it's again of no use, right? If it is not reaching the end user, if it is not improving your gameplay experience, what's the point of having that knowledge? So I'll be focusing on these three things: the mindset of game audio, building, like I'll give some suggestions on how you can build a scalable audio implementation spectrum, so that when you design your games and when you think of your gameplay experiences, you can at least consider those aspects as well. So it's very, very important to understand why you should listen to someone, right? I mean, for me personally, if I have to go and attend a talk, I really need to know what I'm going to get out of it. So for that purpose, I'll introduce myself. So my name is Prashant, and I'm listening. This is how I like to introduce myself, although my wife would argue that this is all true or not. But yeah, I mean, I kind of convey myself not as a tagged director or something else, but I rather mention it as I'm listening because it immediately opens up the possibility for all of you to see the world from my point of view, right? Because we are all listening, we are all on the same page here. But still, just to make sure that you also listen to me for other reasons, I have to say a few more things. So I love setting up creative collaboration. If I find a developer who is, say, doing a DSP work in MATLAB, and there is a musician who is like trying to build a new instrument, I would see a pattern of them collaborating and building a new instrument, right? So I really love setting up creative collaboration. In the past, I've worked as audio director. I also now create product with Soundly. And I'm also an educator. I try to teach game audio to as many people as I can. And just to put a tag, I'm an audiophile, which I'm sure many of you are as well. So another thing that I think that I should mention is whatever you listen from my point of view, just understand that I am not just an audio person. Yes, my whole career has been around audio, but I do bring a perspective of understanding games from a user perspective, from a developer's perspective, from a publisher's perspective, and I wish there were some publishers here. But let me just give you some insights of the kind of projects I have done in the past. So I started working and building audio departments. I started doing voice editing, then I got into music composition, then I got into sound design, mixing, mastering. Then in 2017, when VR was picking up, I explored some VR stuff for YouTube. That's the time when YouTube used to take 48 hours to decode that the video has a SN3D format. So that's the time I was working on all those things. And that's also the time when I was collaborating with brands like Disney, where my role was to build an approach as an audio director so that for every educational games that we were working with Disney for, has a sonic experience which conveys which movie are those sounds belonging to, right? If it is the Frozen movie, you should feel like the sound effects are telling you that, yeah, this story is from Frozen, and so on. I've also worked a little bit with Osmo for slide products for them, and tiny bit with Epic. And the T that you see here is a company, I'm not sure if it exists now, but it's called Touch Talent. And it was basically a platform where artists can upload their work as art form or as poetry and all of that. They did not have audio. I was pitching for it, but I'm not sure if the website exists anymore. I also worked and helped in the discussion for the universal category system. Now, basically, what happens in the audio world is, especially in the world of sound effects, everybody has their own version of naming the files. And it used to be a chaos. So there's this person called Tim Nielsen, who's the sound designer for movies like Lord of the Rings and Finding Dory. So he took the initiative that, hey, why not standardize some things? And then in 2020, during lockdown, there was like a huge discussion from people all over the world to come up and conclude a specific nomenclature. And that's what is UCS. It's now used for all the libraries that you make, all the sound libraries. Pacific is basically my venture. Pacific because Pacific, Prashant actually means Pacific, so Pacific plus Prashant is like Pacific. Yeah, so it's a wordplay there. But I have to explain, so yeah, no point. And now, right now, I'm working with Soundly, world's largest sound effects platform, basically in which you can search for sounds. You can directly take that sound into your application, whether it's an audio application, whether Unity, Fmod, Voice, whatever it is. And it has like deep integrations with Voice. So you can just select a sound, click a button, and the sound will go into Voice. Voice is a middleware. We'll come to that in a bit. Besides that, on my journey of educating more people about game audio, I'm building Game Audio India with a few folks here in the audience. And I'm also teaching game audio in National Institute of Design, but not to audio department. I don't think there is an audio department, but rather to the masters in design students. It's basically the idea is to help them cultivate a thinking in audio so that when they design their games, they have audio right from the start, right? So very smart. I'm just like incepting ideas in everybody's brains. I'm also helping out School of Video Game Audio, which is the only online platform where you can learn game audio in depth. You can make your show reels and so on. It's run by a person called Leonard Paul. And if you have played games in your life, you have heard his work already. And if there's everything, basically, he is there. Besides game audio, I'm also trying to build an audio tech ecosystem in India, for which I'm bringing the Audio Developer Conference, which only happens in London, to India. It's happening next January 2024, which is clubbed with a music hackathon, where the idea is to bring developers and creatives together so they can basically explore and build something. Anyways, so that's about me and my work. I think this helps you understand where I'm coming from, and it will also help you understand what kind of questions you can ask me, right? So don't ask me something like, hey, in C++, why is the thread not working out? So I won't have those answers. But everything else you can throw on me, right? So the question has to be asked, this is a game developer conference, so why are we even talking about audio in the first place? And I think this explains the answer, right? Sound is 50% of the experience. Are you all agreeing about that? Okay. So in my opinion, this is a bogus line. This is spoken by audio departments around the world to feel good for themselves, and it is spoken by other departments for the audio departments at the time when the game has to go out, and they have to have a sympathy sentence. Hey, you know what? We know audio is very important. It's like 50% of the experience. We'll look into it the next time. So in my opinion, especially in games and interactive media, sound is not 50% of the experience. Okay? I come from the audio domain. I know I'll get a lot of backlash for this, but this is the reality. And let me now offend more of you. Neither is game mechanics, nor the visuals, or other elements in the game. And to prove my point and to give my point of view, let's revisit Snakes and Ladder. Anyone here who has not played Snakes and Ladder? All right. So Snakes and Ladder game has actually nothing to do with snakes or ladder, right? In my opinion, that the essence of the game is actually using chance or probability to either support the player or to punish them in the journey to an end goal. And that's about it. Let's assume that this game did not exist in the real world. However, Harry Potter did. I have another game where I'm saying that there are same boxes, like 100 squares, and if at all you reach a specific box, you get a potion which will promote you, or you'll get a curse which will demote you. The context is the same, the story has changed, the whole visual has changed, but the game is still fun. Let me talk, so basically I'm explaining how visuals and stories are not actually the thing that is making Snakes and Ladder fun, right? Let's take another example of game mechanics. Some of you might say that it's the game mechanics of rolling a dice that makes it fun. Are you all agree about that? Like in childhood, do you remember if at all you had like a dice which was slightly biased, you'll figure out how do I roll so I always get 6 or 1. We've all done that kind of hack, right? So if you're thinking that that is the reason why Snakes and Ladder is fun, and that game mechanics is the thing that is driving it to be the fun element, let's shift a few things. So snakes and ladder is about using chance or probability to help the player or punish the player, right? Let's say I'm playing the game with you, and we both agree that we're not going to roll the dice, but we still need the chance factor. So what we'll do is, we'll both agree that on the count of 3, we will think of a number in our heads, and then we'll speak it out loud, and the sum of it would be the answer, right? Right now, I made the game slightly more fun, because now I am trying to guess what he has in his mind, and he's trying to guess what I have in my mind, and we are trying to basically like do some bluff or do some poker face and all that, right? But the context still remains the same. We are still using probability, and we are playing the game. So snakes and ladder is not fun because of rolling the dice. My point is, every game's essence is in something which is very different from where we are focusing. As artists, like people who draw stuff, we are very much into making sure the graphics look amazing. As audio people, we'll be like, hey, the music has to be best, the sound effects has to be best. As narrative writers or storytellers, sometimes we get so caught up in our domain, in our specific niche, that we somehow forget what the essence of the game actually was. Like for example, in Snakes and Ladder, you just have to use chance to support or punish the player. However, knowing this, you still would focus more on the visuals or the story or other bits and not sound. So my point is, if at all the essence of the sound, essence of the game is something that is what makes it fun, where do these other elements come into picture? Where does the game mechanics come into picture or the visuals come into picture? And in my opinion, these elements are what make the game more fun, and which is what I have marked in bold for a very specific reason. All of you in this room are working to make your game more fun. There is already an essence defined. There's already something happening in every game that you're working on. And your aim is to make it more fun for the audience. So if at all you're able to use everything required to make the game more fun, why not audio? So think of it like you're all artists. You're all creating something. So what would happen is, let's say you have a color palette, and you have all the colors in that except the color blue. You will be able to draw deserts, you will be able to draw grasslands, but there will be one point in your life where you want to draw the sky or water. So what I'm doing here in this talk is, you already have all the palettes required. You have the information about how to write a good story, how to write a good narrative, how to think about game mechanics, but you're missing one specific color in your palette, which is audio. Why not add it? You don't have to build a game which has superb audio right now, but down the line, when you have to draw the sky, when you have to draw water, you will at least have that in your arsenal, right? So that's the whole philosophy of why we need to build game audio mindset across functions, across the companies who are building and creating games. So this was the whole bit about game audio mindset. The next bit is about scalability. So there are two ways that we can think about scalability. One is, whoever is creating games here, you will understand the point that in building games is a gamble in a way. In your head, the game is superb, but when the game goes out there in the market, it might fail, right? So there are two ways to think about scalability. One, you have a game that is actually very successful, and you want to scale that up by adding more levels to it. The other side of scalability is that you have like a team of people who can ideate on games, and you want to like try prototypes as soon as possible. So we'll talk about these things one by one, and like throughout the rest of the talks. So one thing is basically expanding on one specific game. The other one is to build multiple prototypes. And eventually what would happen is, we'll try and figure out how audio can help us with that. So this is a saying, I think by Hans Zimmer. I'm not very sure. But the saying goes like, we hear before we see. Especially when it comes to the context of games. Generally what happens is, let's say I am the one playing the game in my mobile phone, and for some reason I got distracted. A sound effect plays, which is basically calling for my attention, and I immediately look back. So it's generally how humans behave. We always hear something first, and then we turn towards it, and then you focus what it's about. So we'll use these kind of philosophies to think about building games and using audio in that. So I think this is a very important thing that gets talked about in audio is, hey, audio is all about creating emotions or connecting with the audience and all of that. I think there's one thing that not many people are aware of, or at least they're not thinking about it, which is audio is a very low effort and high impact element. if you are working on a game and you're focusing like weeks and months to build a very polished VFX, it's going to take you like 3-4 months to do that. Reverse it, like you have a very okayish quality visual, but a good quality sound, you are immediately able to convey the same story to the audience, right? So it's important to always remember that audio is actually a low effort and high impact element, so why not make use of it? The other thing that audio brings is sonic identity. How many of you remember Hamara Bajaj? Right. Do you remember what the visual was in that ad? Decades later, you still remember the brand Bajaj through its sonic identity, right? Now, how many of you use Zomato? Okay. So if you're in a room of, like, say, 50 people, and all 50 people are basically ordering food, would it be easier for you to figure out who among yourselves are using Zomato versus some other food delivery app? Yeah, with the notification sound. So it's a very smart way of using audio in your games to bring in people and to do free marketing, right? And I've also written like extra revenue for that same exact reason. So if you start thinking about audio in that aspect, you can actually think about, hey, I am going to have a game in which I am basically, say, not seeing user retention, or people are not coming back to my game after, say, day 7 or something like that. What can I do to bring them back? That's where audio comes into picture. You play the sound effect in the notification, and the user will see it. Everybody around the user will know, okay, this person is playing this game, and that's how your game's retention rate will basically improve, right? The other thing basically audio does is conveys the game information. I think you're all aware of it. You're playing any game, the game's feedback comes from the audio. The audio will let you know what's happening. Are you winning? Are you losing? Again, user retention I already talked about. The other thing that audio does is localization. And I think this is a challenge that many publishers are also facing, which is if they want to enter a new market, they would want to make the experience slightly more native to the region. And the best way and the easiest way to do is through doing it via audio, especially via music, right? So again, localization is something that you should think about. And there was a talk by Richard, I think on Friday or Thursday, which was about accessibility. How can you use audio for people who are visually impaired or who are having difficulty reading the things on your screen? So accessibility, again, is a great use case. And there was another talk yesterday about using audio ads. I'm not sure how many of you attended it, but the idea is amazing. I hope everybody has played Vice City here. Right. So Vice City has a scenario where you get into a car and you can play the radio. So what they are planning and what their idea is, in the radio, why does it have to be just the music? Why not play an advertisement, right? And immediately using those sonic experiences, you are integrating audio seamlessly into your game story. So audio ads is another great example of using audio in your games. And yeah, like I said, with audio, you can create a world beyond games. You can create an IP. So you release this game. Along with that, you release the music. And let's say you have a catchy track in that. It's already building fan base on another side of the globe or another side of the social media platforms, which is Spotify or YouTube. And you are basically funneling more users towards your game because of that one song. So your marketing reach increases. So again, if you think about audio beyond the cliched ideas of, hey, audio is used for giving like a specific emotion to the gameplay. Yeah, all that is true. But I think the audience here, the developers, and I wish they were publishers, have to also think about other ways that audio can help you make money. Because I think from publishers' point of view, that's what their end goal is, and they are missing out on a huge amount by not utilizing it. If you find a publisher, please let them know. The other thing I think we should be aware of, and my talk is going to extend a little bit, I hope you all are okay with that. There are some key elements that all of us should be aware of, and I'll run through these slides in the next few slides because I'm sure most of you are aware of it, but I want to make sure that you know the specifics of the difference between them. The first thing, of course, is the sound effects. The sound effects are audio elements that basically play in sync with the visuals or based on the user interaction. They can be like one-shot audio, which conveys a specific thing that's happening in the game. The other thing is ambience, and I think a lot of people confuse between ambience and music. So ambience are actually some sounds which kind of create or tell what the environment of the game is. Let's say your game you want to differentiate between an indoor scene and an outdoor scene. You can have like bird sounds in the outdoor version and no sound in the indoor version, right? So ambience is something that is different from sound effects, although like they are kind of like similar. But yeah, just remember that if at all you want to create an environment and you want to communicate to the users, you will be using ambiences. The other thing is voiceovers. And I have no idea why game developers don't use voiceovers. I mean, I kind of am aware like why it could be, but in the world of AI, you should definitely not miss out on this. So here's the thing. I have written a lot of text on the screen, but if at all I read that out for you, wouldn't it be much more convenient? You as an audience here who has eaten food and are almost like in the sleepy state, wouldn't it be much more fun if there is a narrator who can read this through it for you, instead of you basically reading the whole text, which is basically not formatted on purpose. I have not like done any underline or any bold text also, right? So reading text on screen takes away all the focus from the awesome art and visual. That is not drawn by me, it's AI generated. However, you get the point, right? So there are many games, many amazing games where the story will just have text on the screen, where things are happening on the screen. There are characters interacting with other characters, there's a fight happening, but all you can do as a game player is just read the subtitles. What's happening, what's happening? So why is it that game developers in particular are hesitant in using voiceovers? And I understand the cost of recording voices and all can be like huge. So one thing that we can actually start off is by using some AI voiceovers, at least for placeholders, and play test the game with the voices. And I'm sure you will notice a huge increase in the way people understand your games, right? The other thing is that the voiceover does is reduce cognitive load, like I mentioned. Another thing that voiceovers can also do is create an IP. Let's say you have a game character, which is like very cute and friendly and all, and you want that game character to be more relatable to the audience. Make that character say something. Do you all remember Pika Pika? What does that mean? Is it a language? But we all remember, the moment I say Pika Pika, you remember a yellow character, and it could be in a game, it could be in a movie, but you will remember that character. How hard is it for game designers or developers to think of just one small 0.1 second of audio to have in your game, maybe with some variations, and immediately expand the way your game players are interacting with your game, right? Especially if you are thinking of using the notification sound effects, you can actually have the character voiceover play and call the user back. Duolingo does a lot of interesting notifications if you are using Duolingo. They have not done audios yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if they get into that next. Yeah, so I think I gave an example of giggling here, but Pika Pika would have been better. So here's how Soundly can also help you if you want to like quickly generate AI voices. So basically the interface has an option where you can write in the text that you want the voiceover to, artist to say, I mean the AI artist to say. You can select the language. There is Telugu and Indian languages and everything. And it can also read Indian fonts. So you can just type in whichever language you want, choose from a huge set of voices, and then basically click on speak it, and you will get one audio file. You can also do batch render, where you can have a CSV file which has like thousands of dialogues, and you can generate all of them at once, take them into your game, and let your game have a voice. The other thing is music. It's also called BGM. A lot of people get confused about what is BGM, so it's basically background music. And there are two things that not many people are focusing about, especially in the developers circle. So one aspect of music is basically you have a level in the game where there's a music playing, and then when you go to the next level, this music fades out and other music fades in. This is basically the horizontal approach, where there are two different music pieces playing. There is also vertical approach, where you have a game going on, and there's a music playing, and depending on what's happening in the, let's say this is a strategy game where a new wave of enemy comes in. As soon as the enemy enters the screen, you have one layer added to the music, and then you are basically giving them a vertical approach. Now, it is important to remember these things from a developer standpoint. When I'll talk about the scalability, these creative choices also affect that. The other thing that we should also focus on how we want the music in the game to be. Do we want crossfades between the music, or would we want the music to change from one to another in sync with the BPM so it feels very cohesive? And it all basically comes down to developers' work. So yeah, something to be aware of. There's something called musical cues. Are any of you like playing Apple Arcade games by any chance? Okay, some of you. So there is basically a character you all must have heard of called James Bond. So recently there is a game that got released on Apple Arcade called Cypher. And in that game, whenever you win a level, they just play a short musical cue, like 3 seconds long, and the melody will be something like ta-na, 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 and that's it. And you immediately get goosebumps. Oh yeah, I remember James Bond and all that. So musical cues are those elements, those type of audio files which can have like a very short cues that you can play on specific moments in your game to kind of give a specific like agenda or specific moment in the game, but at the same time you can also use to build a connect with your Sonic IP. Like for example, how MGM is doing with the James Bond character. The other thing that you should be aware of are audio effects. I am sure many of you would have already heard about this. So there are reverb, delay, EQ, compression, ducking, and a bunch of things. And this is basically a screenshot from Unity. Just want to make it public that every game engine has audio effects inbuilt. So reverb is basically if you are basically in a, say, chamber or a place where there's a lot of, like a huge room, hall, empty hall, and you say something and your voice echoes, that's basically reverb. And you can actually apply those effects within Unity, right? Just in case you are not aware of it. You can also actually build instruments in the audio world where you can have like piano notes recorded, and you can build instruments that will play live, and a lot of things that you can do with MIDI. And there's also a new trending word called procedural audio. How many of you have heard of procedural audio? Okay. So procedural audio is basically, so there are two ways that you can implement audio in the games. One would be you have audio files that get triggered on specific action or code based. The other is basically you generate the sound in real time during the gameplay. The difference between the two is that if you're using audio files, the RAM is getting used up a lot. And if you're using this approach, the CPU is basically the entity that's taking care of all the processing. There is another application that you all should explore as game developers, which is GameSynth. So for sound designers, GameSynth has that interface where you can draw like some waveforms and get some variations in the sound effects. From a developer point of view, they have an API. So if you notice, there are some modules here. There's envelope, creature, and all that. You can actually take all of this information into your games, and then you have the whole procedural audio world open to you. This is another aspect of game audio, which is mixing. How many of you are aware what mixing is? Okay. Any developers who is not aware of what mixing is? Okay. So generally, when we did the Hey session in the starting, you would have noticed that the energy here was little louder than the energy here and in the center. And generally, when you're playing a game, imagine that you have a voiceover which is very low in volume and the music is very loud. The players will not be able to comprehend what the voice is saying. So mixing is the process where you decide what sound in a specific moment will have what levels, where it will be panned and all of that. So it's an exercise that has a lot of value, which can also define whether or not your game players are understanding the story that you want to communicate or not. Now, the reason I'm mentioning this here is, again, this is from Unity. So it's not like a fancy new tool that I've built. It's all available there. So the more you explore in any game engine, you'll figure out that these things already exist. And that's something that you need to be aware of, mixing. Other key elements that I think developers should be aware of is the file size. And I think this is the huge debate that happens across game companies, wherein I think the publisher's point of view would be, hey, we don't want the game to go beyond 50 MBs. What can we cut down on? And the first answer will be audio. There are 3 BGMs, let's just cut down into 2 or 1 and so on. If you explore file size and file formats in depth, you will also realize that there are some audio files that you can compress heavily, and the audio will still stay retained. And there are other files which you can retain the quality of it by having a huge file size. And the combination of it can actually give you a better budget for your game. So something to explore as a game audio or as a game developer. RAM and CPU, I think I did mention a little bit. If at all you have an audio file that is getting triggered in your game, it's all handled by RAM. However, if at all you have effects that are getting applied in real time, it is all handled by the CPU. And there are some things that is related to game design, which I think you all should explore a little bit more about. So one of the questions that I get asked the most is, how do we decide a tech stack? So the simple answer is this. To cut a potato, you don't need swords, a knife will do. And I think it will start to make sense when I talk about middleware and everything else. So if at all you're a game developer or a game creator who is just figuring out okay, you know what, I have to start thinking about audio maybe in the middle of the game development or in the starting, what all should I consider? First thing that you should think about is the features that you need. And we talked about a little bit about the music. For example, do you want the music to crossfade or do you want the music to stay in sync? That's one of, there are two types of features, right? So you need to understand what are the features that you need. You need to decide whether or not you want to use a middleware, such as Wise or Fmod, as compared to the tools that are available directly in your game engine, versus if you want to write a custom audio engine. And the budget, you also need to know if at all there are technical skills available in your team. Like, let's say you want to have music change in rhythm, but then you don't have anybody who can do that, then there's no point discussing. Or you need to hire somebody who can do it. And if at all you need some kind of machine learning or AI model that you want to add to your games. So features required is like the first point. So you can decide what all features I need based on those aspects, right? Do I need to apply effects in real time or baked in? So who will handle the processing, CPU or RAM, right? And other elements. Apart from that, other features that you might want to consider is DSP. Anybody from electronics engineering here? Okay. So DSP is basically digital signal processing, which is very widely used across domains in images, in audio, and everywhere. So sometimes you might want to have like a specific effect that you want to apply on the audio, and that's where the custom DSP would come into picture. And then there might be some scenarios where you want to protect your IP, and you might want to consider solutions like Pace, which is basically an anti-piracy company that kind of, in a way, help you protect your code and all the assets that you have in Unity. The next question that is asked a lot when we are deciding about the tech stack is the middleware. Do I need Wise? Do I need Fmod? And so far, the industry, especially in India, was hesitant in using middleware primarily because nobody knew how to use it. For the last 10 years, the number of people who know middleware has increased. However, it is still in the audio side. The developers are still not so familiar with it. The other question that always also comes into picture is it's expensive. So there is good news about that. So one thing that you need to be aware of is middleware is basically an application which can allow a lot of audio flexibility to the audio department, and with a click of a button, generate the code required for the game side of things. And the developer on the game side can just add the events to the specific call to action, and then the middleware's code will take care of everything else. Other thing I need to be aware of is that as of today, there are two middleware, Wise and Fmod, and both have free tier available. Wise did not have a free tier, I think, until last year, but now they have as well. And I think the limit of revenue is also like pretty high. So if at all you are still considering middleware, definitely go for it. It's also like audio folks friendly. So when you're talking to a sound designer or a music composer, they'll know what to do. So you won't have to worry too much about the music side. You can just make sure that if in my game an enemy enters, the music will rise. This is what you have to communicate to the composer, and they'll be able to make the music, implement it inside of the middleware, and everything else will be good to go. It also basically generates the code required automatically, and it does the file size and conversion for you. So you don't have to worry about, oh, my BGM has to be in OGG format, or my sound effects have to have slightly higher file size or something like that. It will basically allow you so many options that you can control the budget of your game. So when the publisher comes in and tells you that, hey, the game is 50 MB, cut it down to 30 MB, and when the decision is made that, okay, audio is where we are going to do this massacre, you can still very smartly decide which all audio are you going to compromise and which all you are going to retain. It's also like easy and like customized file conversion, and you can do debugging in detail. So in game engines, the debugging would be like audio is not playing. That's it. Is it playing? Is it not playing? Is it missing? Is it not? That's it. In middleware, you can decide. You can actually debug what's the level of this specific sound effect. What is the level of this music? Should I reduce it? Should I increase it? And all of that. So yeah, Wise is basically free for indies. So again, if you have not checked out, definitely do. Another thing that you should consider when you're using middleware is that try not to mess up with the actual code of the middleware if you're not sure what you're doing, because that things can get messy and you will not know why it's happening. And also, one of the drawbacks is that many developers are not very familiar with the middleware. How do we now make everything scalable? And this is like the most important part of the talk, so I hope you're all awake. So we'll quickly do that exercise again. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So you see the level here is slightly low, right? Can you guys be slightly louder, and can you all be slightly quieter, so we'll balance it out? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So it is slightly louder here. Anyways, this is also what a game audio person does in games. You have audio sources, you do some tweaks, you play the game, you realize, you know what, this is not working out. Then you again make some changes, and again play the game, and then things change. So middleware actually also allows you to do it in real time. Otherwise, in Unity, or especially like 20, 30 years ago, the process would be you make the change in the audio, you give it to the developer will give you a build after 2 days, 3 days, and then it will come back to you and you'll realize, you know what, it is still bad. So yeah, all those things get sorted with middleware. So scalability, I'll just quickly touch upon it because I'm less on time. So the two ways that you should think about scalability is, one is make things modular, the other thing is build templates and presets. So all the developers here, how many of you write classes? Okay. I know it's a very laughable question, but for everybody who does not know coding, I think it will feel fancy. So classes are basically an object-oriented programming concept where you make specific class to do a specific feature. So I would suggest that when you're thinking about audio, write code that's reusable. Because when we think about scalability, what's the aim? We do the effort once, and then we use it everywhere else. So if you want to make like multiple game prototypes, you don't have to write the same audio code again and again. So write reusable code, think of classes, make sure that there's no hard-coded values in them. Other thing that you can approach is having audio managers inside of your Unity or Unreal project, and that also kind of helps you in some way. I think this is something that you should also study on your own as well after the talk, or you can also like come to me and we can discuss more on that. The other thing is templates and presets. So here's the question. Remember we talked about the fact that the Unity and every game engine has a mixer where the voice can be loud, music can be slightly low, and all of that. Why do you want to do the same process again and again? Why don't we just like set up a value? Okay, hey, all my voiceovers will be at this loudness, all my BGMs will be at this loudness, all my sound effects would be something somewhere here, and then when you put all that data into the game, it just works. Why can't we do that, right? And that's what I'm suggesting. Build templates and build presets, which can basically allow you to simplify your process and the time that it takes for you to build prototypes or scale up your products. So templates and presets are basically the starting point. Sometimes when you use a specific preset, it might not work in all the games, so you'll have to do some tweaks, but still saves you time from doing everything from scratch. So yeah, this is the whole thing that I've written here, like how you can make sure that you build templates and presets that is inclusive of all the requirement that you have in the game audio domain. The other thing is that you should all do as developers is interact with the audio teams. I understand audio departments are generally shy, and the interaction that developers do with game designers as compared to audio is slightly more. So I would highly recommend that you talk with game audio folks just for the sake of it. You're not building anything together. We are just understanding each other's point of view. And I think that will also help in the creative collaboration. So yeah, make sure to interact with more audio folks. Make sure that whenever you think of audio in your game, hire an audio director or somebody who understands the overall concept of audio, and then you will be able to immediately realize whether or not you need audio in specific places or not, rather than going with the primitive method of, hey, I have 10 sound requirements, I have 2 BGM requirements, can you give it to me and give back? Because the person in that case is not working on game audio, they're just creating assets for you. So involve game audio folks slightly earlier, share the GDDs with them, and you'll be surprised how much can happen with those inputs. A quick information about resources, because I think it's important to keep this discussion like incomplete, because my purpose of this talk was not to give you a full proof solution, but rather to initiate a discussion. This is the rarest talks that happen in IGDC, and it was important for us to basically make more people aware of things, which also means that there'll be a lot of homework that you'll all have to do. So if at all you want to get into procedural audio, also for the audio folks here, Centorial is one of the best options. I learned it synthesis myself from this, I think in early 2013 or something like that. So it's a great app that you can make use of. Soundly, again, if you are looking for sound effects, you can make use of this. If you're looking AI voices for 10,000 dialogues that you have in like few minutes that you can import immediately for placeholder sounds, you can use that as well. The other resource that I mentioned in the slides earlier was GameSynth, which is basically especially for procedural audio. And the other thing is for music. A lot of question comes in, hey, I want to just like do a playtest with a basic music, but I'm unable to find this exact one that I'm looking for. AI is here. Please make use of it. So you can use this website called Beethoven.ai, where you can choose the specific genre or mood of the music and have like something ready for the playtest before you actually do the final audio. The other option that you can also use is SoundCake. It's a very new venture. In this, basically, let's say you are looking for a specific type of game, a game music. You go to this website, just make a call that, hey, I'm looking for an energetic music for a strategy game. And basically, everybody who's there on the platform will send their music files to you. And depending on whichever you like, you can then make the purchase and so on. So these are some of the resources. Again, there are a lot of learning that you can do in game audio domain. So there are some resources like Game Audio India. So definitely connect with us. We are building a community, so we'll share and we'll discuss ideas. We don't have to build games together. We can just talk. That also is fine. There's also School of Video Game Audio if you want to get deeper into the world of audio, where you want to write custom script or code to make audio do a specific thing. There's also GameAudioLearning.com, which has one of the best possible index of where you can start things. Let's say music is your passion. There's a huge guide on, okay, do this, then this, then this, and then you'll know the music in depth. There's also social media for game audio folks, but I highly recommend all the developers to join it as well. It's basically Airwiggles, and it has been live for almost a year. And please also connect in the Audio Developer Conference that will happen in Jan next year. So a quick summary. I hope you're all still awake. Coming back to the same thing, sound is not 50% of the experience. I'm not here to tell you that you should think about audio right from the start. I am also not here to tell you that audio is important in all contexts. I am here to tell you that it is not. But explore so that whenever you have to build a good experience, you at least have that in your arsenal. The other thing is, please collaborate with game audio folks, make more conversations. Just remember, again, publishers are missing, but even for developers, if you are looking for that one aha factor in your game and you don't have the resources available, go for audio. Audio will get you that attention-grabbing element that you're looking for from the users. And also, build templates and presets together. It's not highlighted or marked in bold. It should have been. By together, I mean developers need to sit with audio folks need to interact with developers to come up with presets that make sense for the game. And yeah, keep things modular to keep them usable. In the near future, there are some things, some utopian things that I would like to talk. There is no audio track in India Developer Conference, India Game Developer Conference, and I'm really hopeful that next year there will be something, Mukund and Rupesh. Also, I am very hopeful that within the next few years, hopefully by 2024 end, we'll have at least one game from India which also wins an award in the audio category, which is also something that was missing in the award ceremony yesterday. So there's best art in games, but there's no best audio in games. But it also makes sense that maybe like it's still yet to be adopted by more people. So hopefully by next year, that will also be the case. And I'm very hopeful that in general, the awareness of audio will be slightly more than what you generally have. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it from me. There are some goodies from my end because I really desperately want more people in India to get into the game audio world. So if you scan this QR code, you'll be taken to one of the pages on my website where you'll get all the things that I talked about, all the software that I mentioned in this presentation. You'll find some other way to access them, try them out, see if it is working out for you or not, and yeah, and experiment as much as possible. So thank you for taking the time to listen to me.